Welcome back, everyone. Today we're diving deep into something a lot of you have been asking about, Spanish verb conjugation.
Oh yeah, it's one of those things that can seem really intimidating at first.
For sure, but also super important if you actually want to, speak Spanish.
Absolutely. Like how can you tell someone what you're doing or what they're doing without, getting the verbs right?
Exactly. So to help us navigate this whole conjugation thing, we're going to be using a YouTube video as our guide today.
Yeah, and it's a good one. They do a really good job of breaking it down, making it pretty clear.
Okay, so the video focuses on present tense verbs ending in R, which I guess is a good place to start.
Definitely. Our verbs are like super common in Spanish. And the video does a good job of like sorting them into regular and irregular verbs, which makes it easier to wrap your head around.
Okay, so that makes sense. I remember when I was first learning Spanish, I always got tripped up by those like verb roots and
Yeah.
endings.
Yeah, the disonencia, right?
Right. Yeah, that's the one. It sounds like some kind of magical spell or something.
Ah, I know, right? But really all it means is like those little tags that attach to the verb root.
And those tags tell us who's doing the action, right?
Exactly. So like depending on if it's I, you, he, she, whatever, the ending is going to change.
Okay, so how does the video actually teach all this?
Well, they use this nice step-by-step method. They'll introduce a verb, then they'll give you some time to practice conjugating it yourself, and then they review it all.
I like that, like the pausing for practice. It actually makes you, like, think about it instead of just passively listening.
Yeah, for sure. You got to actively engage with it to really get it.
Totally.
Yeah.
So let's dive into some of those examples from the video. They start off with some regular verbs, like cantar, which means to sing.
Right. And cantar is like a perfect example of a regular R verb because it follows all the typical rules.
So walk us through how cantar would change depending on who's singing.
Okay, so if I am singing, it would be canto. If you are singing, it's cantas. And for he, she, or the formal you, it's canta.
I'm already seeing a pattern here, like the R changes to O, as, or A.
Exactly. And it keeps going for the plural forms too. For we, it's cantamos. For you all cantas. And for they, it's cantan.
So basically, if you can conjugate one regular R verb, you can kind of conjugate them all.
Pretty much. The endings all follow that same pattern.
That's actually really helpful to know. But I'm guessing it doesn't stay this simple forever, right?
Well, the video also gets into irregular verbs.
Oh, here we go. That's where I always start to get a little lost.
Yeah, irregular verbs can be a bit trickier because they don't always follow those nice, neat patterns.
I'm sensing a but coming.
But even though they're irregular, there's still like a logic to them. It's not totally random.
Okay, that makes me feel a little better. So what kind of examples does the video give for these irregular verbs?
One that they use is contar, which means to count. And it's actually mostly regular, except for one tricky form.
If I had to guess, I'd say it's probably the I form. That one always seems to throw in a curveball.
You got it. So instead of being canto, like you'd expect, it's cuento.
So they snuck in a U there.
Eh.
Sneaky, sneaky. So I'm assuming there are other verbs that pull these kinds of tricks?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like dar, which means to give. The I form is completely different. It's do.
Wow, that's like a whole different word.
I know, right? But like I said, even with these irregular verbs, there are often these like little patterns within the irregularity.
So it's like a puzzle, figuring out those patterns. I remember also struggling with verbs that form like diphthongs when you conjugate them.
Oh, yeah, like empezar, which means to start, and jugar, to play.
Right. Why do some verbs get those diphthongs and others don't?
That's a good question. It often has to do with like the history of the language and how pronunciation has changed over time.
Fascinating. It's like the more you dig into this stuff, the more you realize there's so much depth to it.
Absolutely. And it makes you appreciate the language even more.
Totally. It really is amazing, though, how much goes into like just saying I sing or they play in Spanish.
Right. And the cool thing is it's not just about like memorizing these endings. There's actually a logic to it.
Speaking of logic, the video really highlighted how those R verb endings change based on, who's doing the action.
Yeah, those pronouns are like the key, like they tell the verb how to behave.
So can you give us a quick recap of how the endings work?
Sure. So like for our verbs, the ending changes to o if it's yo, which is I. Then it's as for tu, which means you. And for él, ella, or usted, meaning he, she, or the formal you, it's I.
Okay, and what about the plural forms?
For nosotros, meaning we, it's amos. Then I is for vosotros, you all. And an for ellos, ellas or ustedes, meaning they or the formal you all.
So each ending has its own, like, specific job, its own specific subject it goes with.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
really, really cool how it all works together.
Yeah, the video did a good job of explaining all that. But it also didn't shy away from, the more complicated stuff.
Ah, you mean the irregular verbs.
Those are the ones that always trip me up.
Yeah, they can be a little tricky. But even though they're irregular, they still often have like some kind of internal logic to them.
Okay, so it's not totally random.
Not totally, no. Like take the example of contar, which means to count. It's mostly regular, but then it throws in a curveball in the I form.
Let me guess, it's not canto, like you'd expect.
Nope. It's cuento with a U.
Ah, those sneaky U's. So I'm taking it, there are other verbs that have these little quirks.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like dar, meaning to give. The I form changes completely to do.
Wow, that's wild. It's like a whole other word.
I know, right?
Yeah.
It's like they want to keep us on our toes.
So basically, we can't just assume that all verbs will follow the same pattern. We have to be ready for anything.
That's a good way to put it. Be ready for anything. And remember, there are those verbs that form diphthongs during conjugation, too.
Right, like empezar and jugar.
Yep, those are good examples. And those diphthongs, they add a whole other layer of complexity to pronunciation and spelling.
Why do some verbs have those diphthongs while others don't, though? Is there a reason?
Well, it's often related to how the language has evolved over time.
Makes sense. It's amazing to me how much depth there is to this whole concept of conjugation.
It really is. It's like a little window into the history and evolution of the language itself.
And we've just scratched the surface here, haven't we? I mean, the video focused on are verbs, but there are also and are verbs out there.
Oh, yeah, there are. And they come with their own set of rules and, of course, their own irregular verbs.
I'm almost afraid to ask, but are they more or less complicated than the are verbs?
Well, I don't know if I'd say they're more complicated necessarily.
Yeah.
But they're definitely different.
So it's a whole other adventure waiting for us. Exactly.
It's like we've built this solid foundation with our verbs, and now we can start, building on to our Spanish skills.
Exactly. It's like learning those are verbs was step one. Now we can move on to those are and are verbs and really expand our Spanish vocabulary.
And what's cool is, like, we're not going into this totally blind. We've already learned so much about how conjugation works, how verbs are structured.
Right. We have a framework now. We can apply that to these new verbs.
That makes me feel a lot less intimidated. But I'm still curious, are and are verbs like way more complicated than are verbs?
Well, they definitely have their own quirks and challenges.
I bet. So what should we be prepared for? What kinds of things should we be looking out for?
Well, the good news is the basic idea of conjugation is the same. You still have those subject pronouns that tell you how to change the verb ending.
Okay, so that part's familiar, but I'm guessing the actual endings are different.
Right, they are. And some of the irregular verbs, they can really throw you for a loop. Sounds like a fun challenge. I guess the key is to just keep practicing, right?
Absolutely. The more you practice, the more those patterns will start to make sense.
And, even if we make mistakes along the way, that's okay.
Yeah, mistakes are part of the process.
They help us learn. So I guess the main takeaway here is don't be afraid to dive into those and ire verbs, even if they seem a little daunting at first.
Exactly. Embrace the challenge. It's all part of the journey of learning Spanish.
And remember, we've got this foundation, this understanding of how conjugation works, thanks to this awesome YouTube video.
It's a great starting point.
Definitely. So for anyone listening who's ready to take that next step, what advice would you give them? How should they approach learning and are verbs?
I'd say look for those patterns, just like we did with the are verbs, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's how you learn.
That's great advice. So, to wrap up, we've taken this deep dive into Spanish verb conjugation. We've explored how our verbs work. We've even tackled those tricky, irregular verbs.
And we've learned that even though it can seem complicated at first, there's a logic to it.
Exactly. And with practice, anyone can master it. So to all our listeners out there, keep practicing, keep exploring, and keep diving deep into the fascinating world of language learning.